Yeah.
So
Welcome.
my name is Stuart Scadron-Wattles. Thank you, Lamel. Good to be here with you. You'd asked me to say a couple of words about who I am. On my Substack profile, I say I'm a contemplative and a sailor, and that's pretty much where it is. But there's less about my background there, and it might be helpful to know. I trained as a theater artist. I worked professionally in the theater arts. Established and ran my own company for 18 years in Canada in southwestern Ontario. I've also worked as a fundraiser professionally with Cornell University and with others. And after my bout as an artistic director, I came to the West Coast to be with family, and now on the West Coast and retired. But before that, I was doing fundraising here as well, both for an international rural development company. Say company, but it was a nonprofit that operated out of Seattle and enabled land ownership in Central America, and then also for an arts organization here in that was based here in Seattle called Image, which was a faith and arts magazine. So that's sort of my professional background. I've been writing all my life. And so when Substack came up, it was like, oh, look, I could do this, especially because the regime 2.0 had hit. And it seemed to me that we needed to kind of connect. I wanted to connect the contemplative work that I was doing and enjoying and learning from with the cultural sphere that we're in now in the United States, and try to be helpful. So that was what I was my initial impetus for it. As I said, I think we've talked about this before, but I started out with a post that was entitled "What's Wrong?" And I was asking myself that question as much as I was sort of generally. I don't see myself as a political pundit or a astute cultural commentator. Observing the cultural landscape has been something that I've been doing professionally as an artistic director, and something that you just don't get it out of your blood. It becomes something that you do. What does this film mean? What does that art mean? How does this work? Why is this music not popular now and was then? What is it that's going on in our hearts as we experience art? And just sort of general cultural life.
Yeah.
I'm based in the Pacific Northwest, in the Seattle area. So that gives you a feel for that. I moved out here to be with family.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So the interface between contemplative practices and the work that they do within us and how we interact with the world in practical ways is always a very interesting interface. How have you worked with this in your own life?
Well, part of it has been studying sort of that realm. Carl Gustav Jung, working with what inner work is. I've been a member of a 12-step program for a long time, over 10 years. I've been sober over 10 years. And so it's when you do that, you're doing inner work and you're doing spiritual work, and you're doing it at a very nitty-gritty level with yourself and with other people. So I'm used to that, to exploring that area. It's always been my interest, and I feel that the contemplative work, and especially the esoteric writings and readings and studies. I've been a student of Cynthia Bourgeault's for a long time. I love her work, and Richard Rohr as well. And so in that space, there's a lot of that going on. So that's pretty much how it's been. I can't say it's been, I don't have a degree. I didn't study this academically. I find that I get impatient with the academic side of it if I sense that the people who are doing that work are simply studying esoteric work from an academic standpoint. And a theological standpoint, especially. Theology just gets to me. I know it's a necessary discipline, and it really gets to me, primarily because of the constraints that it has put on the church and the Christian church and that kind of thing. But range around a little bit in Islam, but don't have any formal training there. My interest in Islam and in Buddhism is based on the interfaith work that Thomas Merton has pioneered, and that so many people have carried on. It's important for me, and then it's sort of cultural. One of the things that I have been delighted with in my contemplative studies is how much overlap there is, and how much the world religions and para-religions have sought to answer very, very basic questions, and then many of them come up with overlapping answers. They're not the same; they're overlapping, and that's what's interesting about them. It's that thing that I forget where the saying originated, but it's a finger pointing at the moon.
Yes.
Religion is a finger pointing at the moon. Any discipline is a finger pointing at the moon. Some parts of the moon are not visible to that finger, and the whole thing can't be seen. Unknowing is as important as knowing. In the contemplative work, and especially doing inner work, you learn that you're going to go through seasons of knowing and unknowing. That's part of what's supposed to be there. So I've been dabbling a little bit in the neurology of it, because I'm interested in what science has to say about some of these things, not to prove something, but to see where the overlap is. I mean, that we've done a lot of, quantum physics especially has done a lot of things that we contemplatives have looked at and said, oh, we knew that already.
Yeah.
We knew that you can be there and not there at the same time. Yeah, we knew that. Intuitively, we knew that. To get somebody to do the measurements and say, no, what's going on is great.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially, we're post-enlightenment. So for us, anything that sort of gets some kind of stamp of approval that way is great.
Yeah.
That's the space I've been in.
So in this space with all of these wonderful things that you've been playing with and swimming in, what are some learnings that you have had around, the practicalities of living in our time and what that means for someone who is a practical contemplative?
Good question. I think the thing that has most impressed me over the past 3 years has been Gina Salzman's Reality of Being. That book, which I first worked on myself and then co-taught with a friend of mine in a sangha, was really had a great impact. I was exploring it for myself as much as other people when we were doing it in the sangha, and there was some great insights. But this understanding that presence is key in so many ways for human beings has really impacted me. The latest work, I think, the stuff that's most fresh for me right now is the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and the Gospel of Philip. I've been sort of immersed in that for a while now. I'm a latecomer to those ones. the trend is already past, which means there's been a good amount of writing and translation that's gone on, and that's great. I'm fascinated by the early Christians and what it is, especially the Jewish Christians, because I'm part Jewish, and what they were dealing with at the time just before the Imperial Church got established.
Yeah.
And the struggles that they were going through about what gets transmitted, what doesn't get transmitted, how does it get transmitted. You know, the Gospel of Philip famously was reorganized. The manuscript that we picked up at Nag Hammadi had been reorganized, and there was no logic to it and no progression to it. And it's one of the theories behind that disorganization is that they deliberately wanted to obscure it and keep it from being a manual of contemplative work. And I can right now, just because I have a vivid imagination, as I read through, I'm going, they're really concerned about this. They're really concerned about getting this set in stone in some way that would be unhelpful. They're already arguing against certain things. You know, they're already saying the resurrection didn't happen in the body. And to insist that it happened in the body is to focus on the wrong thing. And you go, whoa. You know, they're in some ways they're being confrontational, and of course that's one of the reasons they need to hide things. And in another way, they are speaking to themselves and saying, don't let this go. Don't let this go. The realization of this is key. And I think the thing that's freshest for me is the concept of realized human beings, as Ward Bauman's translation says, that in fact a Christian should be able to say, I am the Christ. And they go right out. They're straight out on this thing. You know, if you can't say I am the Christ, then you can't really say I'm a Christian. That's something else. That's a knowledge of things that's going on, but it's not a transformation. The key is the transformation. And when you look at it that way, and you see the contemporary movement in contemplative work to say, you know, it's not about contemplative or active. It's about living out your contemplation. The results of your contemplation should be lived out. Doesn't mean everybody needs to be at the food bank volunteering. Just means that you need to find your place. Because until you find I think the thing that's wonderful about this is until you find your place, or series of places, because that's the way it really works, you don't have opportunities to do inner work. And the opportunity to do the inner work is really key. You can't do much inner work in your cell. I mean, you can, but, you know, eventually the food's going to bug you, or the person who delivers it is going to bug you, or just walking down the hall, you're going to get bugged by your fellow monk going the other way. You know, the inner work is going to present itself to be done or not to be done, to be explained away or to be ignored, but it's going to be there to be done.
So the interface between inner work and outer work is a two-way conversation.
That's correct.
The two must be together because they stimulate one another, and that's where the growth is. That's where the life is. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, if you're cooking, for instance, and you're cooking with tomatoes, there's an acidic side to that, and you're going to put some sugar in that, but if it's not going to, it might not be the right balance. You've got to get the right balance of acidic and sweet to make that in this case sauce, to make that tomato sauce work. And you can use other things. You can use lemon. You know, lemon's a good way to deal with it. Instead of salt, I had a chef who taught me some things, and one of the things he said was, if you finish something and you think it needs a little bit more salt, try adding a little bit of citrus instead.
Mm.
He said
I love that.
it will liven up the flavor in a way that salt will only just, you think you need salt, but what you really need is a brightness on the palate. That's how it works. That's how they work together. You have to have these things, and the universe works that way. That's why I bring up the cooking. It's sitting in chemistry.
Yeah. When I was a kid and I would see my mom go into the kitchen, I always said, "Oh, she's going to go do magic." There is something there's something magical about cooking and the kitchen and the very daily things. I think that's what we're talking about. Is it's not this otherworldly reaching for I don't know, high concepts. It is seating ourselves within presence, which is something that you mentioned before, and being fully alive in the moment, and learning how to do that in our lives. And that's creating a beautiful banquet.
Right. And I think it's also being more human. Jill, I've been revisiting the story of Jill Bolte Taylor, the neuroanatomist who had a stroke and lost the use of the left side of her brain. And she was 8 years in recovery.
Wow.
But she had this, and she's got this TED Talk that's just incredible. And it's 30 million views because human beings want to know what's going on that right side. I don't know. There's a reason you don't know. And she talks a lot about that. And I've been thinking a lot about the right brain with its unitive understanding and its ability to grasp the universe in a way that, people take LSD to do. But it's able to do it without that stimulation. You don't absolutely need that. Some people need a psychedelic for it to work for them. I'm not one of those people. But the human balance requires both this unitive thing and the thing that can categorize and say, whoa, that was a little loud what you just said there. Maybe you want to tone that down. The right brain doesn't know about that. It has no way of dealing with that. It just says sound coming in. That's it. But the right brain can say, there's a feeling happening, right? Which the left brain classically says, I'm at work now. I can't deal with that. When you're retired, things change. I'm retired, and you don't have that excuse.
Yeah.
I can't say something harsh to my wife and then leave the house because I got to get to work. If I say something harsh, my wife's still there, and I got to deal with that. So
at this time in your life, there's a different kind of spaciousness, a different kind of opportunity to work in a way with these things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 77 years old. I haven't had a major illness yet, and my brother has dealt with several of them. My younger brother, and people all around me. At this age, this is when people pass. And you get a lot of, I'm going to this memorial service. No, that happened to him. How did that happen? Right? Oh, he's not doing well. Oh, she's not doing well. You get into this thing of, you can get very paranoid about it, and there are people who make money off of that. But I when I look at that, and I see, you're still healthy. You can still do this and still do that and still do the other. What do you do? What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Well, one of the directions that I've found to be very helpful is contemplative work and inner work, and balancing those two things out.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So when I approach culture, that's going to be my take.
Yes.
Right? So it's no longer about politics now. It's about consciousness and how it's being applied or not. And that's why my take is there. And I'm trying not to write for contemplatives. I'm trying to write for people who, I mean, I get a lot of people of faith who are part of my, God, over 100 subscribers. So it's not a big group, and many of these readers, are friends and relations.
Of course, yes.
But what I'm trying to do is the person I have in mind when I write is my brother, who's not a person of faith, worked all his life as a lawyer. I love him to death. He's a great guy. We have we went through lots of trauma together. So there's all that wonderful history. We've dealt with it differently, but we've dealt with it. So we've got all of this going on, and he doesn't speak my contemplative language, which is great. I've got to find the right language to write with.
That is a wonderful conversation. I've learned in my life that when we don't have the same language, the fruitfulness of communicating is greater, because now we work in communicating things in ways we would have never done before, and that transforms our own understanding of what it is we're communicating.
Do you speak a language other than English?
I speak Spanish. I was in Bolivia, South America, for a few years when I was very young, and both of my parents speak Spanish. When we came back to the U.S., I was in the educational system here from first grade on and lost a lot of it, and then regained some of it visiting when my parents moved back to Latin America. So there's this piece about learning other languages or communicating with people who speak a different language. It's not just literally people who speak Spanish or some other language, but in our interactions, one of the quotes that I like from the Gottman world. I'm a Gottman certified therapist working.
Oh, are you really? Yeah. Love John Gottman. Great stuff.
He's great. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes from Dr. Gottman is, "Every relationship is a cross-cultural experience," and there is deep truth to that. And I think that those truths and the ways of interacting with one another that we learn in our relationships, and sort of this notion of cross-culturalness, is something that would be very beneficial for us as a country to work to embrace, right? What this way of trying to connect and interact and understand one another when our languages are so very different in a lot of ways, and we have been moving apart in a lot of ways. So,
and we have a tremendous pressure to not do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I spent 18 years in Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen as well as a U.S. citizen, and you look at the melting pot versus the mosaic, which is the shortcut for how Canada deals with multiculturalism, and how the United States deals with multiculturalism. And multiculturalism in the United States is you may come from that country and that might be the way you work and think, but by gum, your kids are going to learn baseball, and they're going to go to American colleges, and they're going to learn cheer squad, and they're going to learn all those kinds of things, and they are eventually going to become real Americans, as though we know what that is.
Yeah.
So there's that side to it, but there's also a very interesting knowing unknowing piece to it, which happens with language, as you're saying. If you had a language, lost it, then come back to it, you start reaching, right? Your brain starts reaching. What is that? I know that word. I know I have the concept right here. I have that word.
My tongue.
Right. and then you can come out with it and speak it. But even if you don't have that word and you're speaking with somebody who's a native speaker of that other language, you can say, and they'll say, cuchara. And you say, okay, yes, that's right. That's what it is. Right. It's not chair, it's sia. Right. I get it. So and when that revelation occurs, there's something happens in the brain. There's a connection that occurs, and I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to venture it. There is a sense of love and trust that develops for another person who helps you when you can't quite speak the language. It's because we were able to get a concept back and forth with one another. It's the same thing happens when you're speaking with somebody who doesn't speak English very well. And you're not impatient with them because you understand, as somebody who has another language or who's had another language to understand, it's not easy. English is a terrible language to learn from scratch. and so when we do that, the other person is deeply grateful because we're meeting them where they are, not where they aren't. It's the thing that drives us nuts. If we're French speakers, it's the thing, or trying to speak French, it's the thing that drives us nuts about Paris. The waiters really do not care to indulge you, right?
I've heard of it. I haven't visited.
Right?
Yeah.
No, my mother was French. I've spent a lot of time in France, and we grew up in a French school. So it was that way when I as an American who was quasi capable in French. When we joined the French Lycée, it was my brother and I. They didn't accommodate us at all.
Wow.
It's like I suddenly became a whiz at math because it could be written down. Uh-huh. And the teacher decided that she wasn't going to just recite the problems, but for the Américain in the room, she was going to write the problem on the board. I'm going, oh, I know this. That was the end of my facility in math, but it was short-lived but good. That commonality that develops across culture, there's a delight that happens, an ability, and we feel more human, I feel.
Yeah. There are a lot of overlaps and shadings, right? There are a lot of concepts and experiences that we can draw from that help us to, hopefully, to connect, right? Yeah. Well, I know that we had agreed to have a conversation of around half an hour, and I think we're approaching that very quickly. Is there anything that you would want to add to sort of bring us to a close?
I think that the contemplative work that we are doing has a number of dimensions to it. And I think this dimension, the one that both of us are engaged in, translating this into a world where we're not dealing with fellow contemplatives, we're dealing with people who are trying to make sense of their lives and make sense of society. That's a really important place to be. and we're still developing the language for it. God help us if we ever do, because stumbling through it is exactly what we need to be doing. And the problems that we are we have worldwide, this is not just the United States, the problems that we have worldwide in trying to make democracy work have everything to do with being human and very little to do with political adherence.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the work that you're doing, both your own work and your work in the world. And thank you for this conversation here. It has been wonderful. I am delighted to be on the path with you, as they say.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like I've got another friend on the path. Thank you so much.
Thank you.